Grand Rising Soul Family. Adam Jackson here with a special episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. We have an inspiring and incredible and courageous guest today by the name of Charles Eisenstein. I'm feeling honored and feeling some pleasantness to know that Charles has come back to us for the second time, and he has also been with us on an online convergence once before. So thank you for doing that. And with that, our guest today, he is a writer and public speaker. He is a modern philosopher who brings thoughtfulness and compassion when engaging in challenging topics of conversation. So let's bring through some of that compassion today. And he is also the author of the new book, The Coronation, Essays from the COVID Moment. Please welcome Charles Eisenstein.
Hey, Adam, thanks for such a generous introduction.
Yeah. How does it feel when I say these words about you? You know, that you're courageous, that you're thoughtful and compassionate?
I guess it kind of triggers it brings stuff up. I'm like, dare I actually receive that? Is it really true? And it brings up habits of deflecting gifts, praise and affirmation is a kind of a gift.
Yeah, as men from time to time, it's difficult to receive the accolades, but I'm going to tell you why I'm saying that.
Yeah.
You were generous enough to send me a copy of the new book. And when I opened it up and I saw the dedication, dedicated to the children of our children. I mean, when I read that, in saying that, I can feel the chills in my eyes even welling up. What inspired you to bring forward that dedication?
Yeah, that was very specific because during COVID, at the beginning, I just kind of shot my mouth off. I spoke out. Here's what I see is happening. With no idea that what I said would be so politically loaded. The stuff I said, I'd been saying for years. In 2017, I wrote an article called Zika and the Mentality of Control. I was writing stuff skeptical of vaccines in 2003. I never got categorized and attacked as a right-wing white supremacist Trump conspiracy theorist nut job before. I was just kind of people were like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. Oh, germs are not just enemies, they're also part of a larger process of health and evolution. Oh, that's interesting. It wasn't politically loaded. So I came out with this stuff in the first few months of the pandemic, and I just got I got pretty heavily criticized, and to the point of I really took it in, and I went for months and months without saying anything about COVID.
Yeah,
because I wanted to be sure that I was not, in fact, killing grandmothers and putting people at risk, and how can I be sure that what I'm saying is true? And that got mixed in with a kind of cowardice, where I'm it's a lot safer to keep my head down. And because what I saw was totalitarianism, fascism rising,
yes,
fueled by the same kinds of dehumanization and scapegoating that earlier waves of totalitarianism have been fueled by. Yeah. And I knew all of us have a ancient instinctive navigational system that knows how to stay safe in times when mob morality is rising. How to establish yourself as one of the in-group, how not to be marked off as a witch or a heretic or a Jew or whatever the latest victim is going to be. So what made me speak out though, eventually, I really waded into it knowing, like initially I didn't know that I was going to get reamed. But when I returned to it in 2021, I knew what was going to happen. And the reason I did it was because what good does keeping safe do when my children and grandchildren are going to have to live in a world that I just let happen?
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is what happens when you get older, you know, like I'm in my 50s now.
Yeah.
And the end is in sight. I mean, I'm still healthy, but like, you know, my parents' generation are almost all dead. Some of them in my generation are starting to die off even, you know, and
Yeah.
like I'm not going to be here forever. So that's
It's a motivating force.
yeah, like naturally, you know, a kind of courage actually develops as you get older, because you know you're going to die anyway. So that's where the dedication of the book came from.
I just love that. And that's the truth. You know, things that are happening now are going to impact our children. And it's a very scary proposition that someone like yourself or like myself or anyone out there would feel more safe to keep our mouths shut and our head buried in the sand. Like that's not a world that I want to engage in. And so thank you for coming out of the cave and, you know, pulling your head out and using your voice. And so today we're gonna drop into all things the coronation. Before we get there, we'd like to invite us to take a deep breath for ourselves, feeling into this day, into this moment, with where we are. And Charles, on this beautiful day, when you feel into it, what is most alive within you?
Well, I've got a whirl of background feelings that are, you know, from my 17-year-old son is here. He doesn't live with me usually, and it's really good to connect with him. And I've returned to writing about coronavirus issues. I'm writing a series called Pandemania. And so I've been reading a lot. So, and I solicited topics from my readers. I'm like, hey, what would you like me to write about, you know, in the COVID arena? And I got like so many powerful, nuanced, heartfelt responses, like comments on the thread, like that were, I mean, every emotion you can imagine in those, but expressed almost universally with a lot of civility. And like, yeah, I'm validating my feelings, but I'm not wanting to project things onto others, like really like a high level of maturity that gave me a lot of hope. So that's what I'm sitting with and writing and speaking from at this
Beautiful.
time.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that connection with your son, Adam, checking in. I just spent a week in Tennessee, in Gatlinburg, in a cabin on a river with my entire family. My mom and dad have been divorced as long as I've been alive. My brother and his family and his 5 children, and me and my 3 sons. And after COVID, you know, I haven't seen them in 2 years. And in that 2 years, I've had 2 kids that my dad never met. Wow. That my mom was able to be my brother. Like my brother had another son. And so this was a culmination of a couple years of life experience coming back together and spending that time. And that time is priceless. So I'm really filled with that love for my family in this time. And, you know, we're also coming a day after yet another mass shooting in America. This one in Illinois on July 4th. And so at the same time, filled up with a lot of love for my family, for my children, I have a lot of concern. I guess that would be the word that I'm using, concern. And, you know, a part of Sacred Sons in this movement to bring healthy, honest, and compassionate masculinity to the forefront of our culture. And this is why. Like,
Yeah.
if there ever was a why, this is it. I want to kind of throw that back to you. You know, when you see these type of atrocities, and you see that the divisiveness still lingers.
I always look at what is neither side in the polarized debate asking. What questions are just unasked? What assumptions are taken for granted? What are we not paying attention to?
Yeah.
When our attention is devoted obsessively to a single question that represents the entire phenomenon, like the question of gun control, the question of Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
So both of these issues are symptomatic of a society that's very sick already.
Yes.
Like, you could talk, like, if we're living in a society where people are like walking into schools and shooting children, like, yeah, if you take that for granted, or if you take all these mass shootings for granted, then that frames the debate in a certain way about gun control, for example.
Yeah.
And you might say, okay, well, we definitely need to, take everybody's guns away.
Yeah, ban
so that
assault
doesn't happen
rifles.
anymore.
Right.
But that doesn't, it addresses the symptom, but not the cause. Like,
Absolutely.
why is this happening? Where is this rage coming from? Where is this despair coming from? Why is it so easily turned to violence? And if we don't answer those questions, then taking the guns away is not going to change very much.
Yeah.
People will find other ways to kill each other, or that unprocessed rage and anger and grief and despair will come out in other ways. Now, when I say that, people are like, oh, so you want to keep. I'm not actually stating an opinion about whether guns should be abolished or not, or about the Second Amendment or anything like that. I have opinions on it, but I don't think that the opinion on that issue is the most important thing. I don't want to add to the obsession with that as an issue, as the question,
Right.
And I'm not saying it's bad to do that. I'm just saying, like, that's not my role. I want to look at the cause.
And so here's my perspective. It's beyond a mental health crisis. What I'm experiencing is a spiritual lack. Like, we are living in a godless, like, culture that lacks connection to the sacred. And so, my perspective on it, like what you're saying, I'm trying to zoom out and have kind of a higher vantage point to say, like, what would cause someone to actually do that? You know what I mean? And what I'm seeing and what I experience, and it goes back to COVID. I was at a backyard barbecue recently, and a good friend of mine said, I was going to invite my mom to my wedding, but she's an anti-vaxxer. And I said, no, she's your mom. Okay. And so, like, this divisiveness, this for me, it all is leading to a lack in a connection to the sacred and to spirit. How does it feel when I'm saying these words?
Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on with it. You could say it's a lack of connection to the sacred and to spirit, or you could say that it's a lack of connection, period. Because one thing that predisposes people to division, to polarization, is a deficit of belonging and a loss of identity. When somebody is torn from the matrix of relationship and has no connection to community, to place, to spirit, to the plants and animals around them, and interacts with the world mediated through technology and money, like that person is going to feel uneasy. They're going to feel like they're not fully here, and they're not going to have a strong sense of who they are. They won't feel at home in the world. So that person is easy prey for ideologues and fascists and marketers who meet that loss of identity with a brand identity, with a group identity, with a story that validates you and tells you who you are and makes sense of the world. So this is like a part of a generalized breakdown in meaning, belonging, and identity that makes us all susceptible to cults, to the mainstream cult, which is also a cult, to all of the heterodox cults, the conspiracy theories, like that is so powerful that it even tears families apart. Like this need to know who I am and to belong. And so that's only one aspect of what's going on.
Yeah, and there's a piece here where when we other someone or a group, it does create this sense of like identity, but also like I'm in the know, I'm right.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're talking about something as detrimental and as atrocious as like these mass shootings, it's not about being right. It's not about being right. It's like, how do we get back into connection?
Yeah.
How do we avoid those pitfalls of, the conspiracy road? And you wrote a chapter on that, the conspiracy myth.
Yeah.
And so what was your kind of estimation on what has happened most recently with the rise of so-called like conspiracy culture?
Okay. I mean, again, it's on one hand, it's meeting the disintegration of sense and meaning with a substitute. Like everything we were told about the world doesn't make sense anymore. The authorities were lying to us. Science was missing part of the picture. UFOs are actually real, and they were lying to us and suppressing that for decades, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know what's real anymore. And instead of abiding in the I don't know, that's really uncomfortable. So we tend to jump to another totalizing discourse that also explains everything, just like the old story used to explain everything.
Right.
So that's one thing that's going on. It provides like some kind of security and comfort. I want to return though to your barbecue. This is related because I want to invite my mother to the wedding, but she's an anti-vaxxer. Okay, so what's really going on here? Is it that person is actually scared that her mother is going to make people sick because of her beliefs about vaccines?
The person who said it is vaccinated and has had COVID twice.
Right. So there's nothing rational going on there. But what's going on is that vaccination has become a badge of acceptability. You are in the in-group, you are a good person, you are a full human being if you are vaccinated. And if you are unvaccinated, or even worse, espouse anti-vaccine ideas, that marks you as one of the out-group, as somebody in a way subhuman, deficient in morals or intellect. And you don't want to be associated with subhumans, because that marks you as subhuman too. You become a communist sympathizer. Right. During the Holocaust, like you could not be friends with a Jew, or you would get in trouble. During the Stalinist purges, if you interacted at all with a dissident, you would be tainted, and the people around you would be tainted. So you had to distance yourself. During the witch hunts, the best way to protect yourself was to accuse somebody else of being a witch. So we're like, this goes back tens of thousands of years, this primal instinct to distance ourselves from the people who are gonna be ritually murdered as scapegoats. This is I wrote, like, this is the core of the Coronation book, a series of essays based on the work of Rene Girard, the philosopher, about sacrificial violence and scapegoating and dehumanization, and just this ancient pattern that plays out in so many aspects of our lives. Like even in grade school, like one of the kids has cooties. Did that ever happen in your school?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, Kent has cooties,
Or even worse, they have the off-brand of shoes or the Payless shoes, and we have Nikes. Like that type of tribalism.
Right. So all of a sudden you can't associate with that kid.
Yeah, they're the outcast.
And everybody, it's like, it looks to him like a conspiracy. It looks to him like maybe a couple of ringleaders got together and decided he was the kid with cooties, and then everybody else went along with it. But it's not, and that addresses the conspiracy question. It's not necessarily a conscious conspiracy that the bullies and ringleaders got together and decided to pick on Kent. It's that as soon as there's any doubt about some person, could be Kent, that's who it was when I was in fourth grade, that they might have cooties, these opportunistic bullies jump on that and they ride that to power.
Yeah.
Writ large, that's fascism. You have to have a them in order to have the fascistic us.
Right.
This is really what Matthias Desmet is also talking about in mass formation. And so some people jump opportunistically onto it right at the beginning. Others see the way the wind is blowing and they chime in. Others secretly think, well, there's actually nothing wrong with Kent, but nobody else seems to be standing up for him. So maybe there is something wrong with him.
Right.
And maybe I better go along with it too. Others are disgusted at what's happening, but they don't dare speak out. And maybe a few people do try to stand up for Kent and defend Kent, and then they get cooties as well. So this is what I was terrified by during when I saw what was happening. Like, I thought that was actually much more disturbing than the actual medical dangers of the vaccines. Absolutely. Now, like, full disclosure, I think that they're dangerous. I think that the harms were way understated. I think we're barely beginning to even see how dangerous and risky they were and so forth. Like, I have my opinion on this, okay? But that wasn't the main problem that I had with them. It was the mass formation, like the forming of a fascistic us.
Right.
That is capable of anything, capable of excluding your own mother from a wedding. Like, that's how powerful it is. I got a letter recently from a woman who is dying of cancer, and she is not allowed to see her granddaughter because she was even vaccinated, but she didn't get boosted.
Oh my God.
And her oncologist said, recommended against it. And like, she's like, that is how powerful these forces are. And these are the forces that have torn apart humanity. Like, this is why we can't solve any of our problems. This is why our society is so paralyzed, because we're fighting each other, and we're fighting each other based on a dehumanizing reduction of the people on the other side to monsters.
Yeah.
And we're all buying into that. And like, there are real differences of opinion that are important, but they become fuel for this fire of polarization and division that is much, much bigger than the problems themselves.
And so there was more than just the virtue signaling element of COVID. There was also the BLM, there was George Floyd, there was this huge racial tension in that COVID moment. And so there was another like kind of arm of divisiveness, and then there's even more happening now with the gun debate, with Roe versus Wade. And
Right.
I was having a conversation earlier, or actually with my brother, and he was saying, like, why is it different? Why is George Floyd different than Rodney King, or different than any of these other shootings? And my response was, because of social media. And so my question for you is, like, do you feel like social media amplified, or was the fuel to the inevitable burning down of this village? Because that's what I experienced. It's like there's so much opinion being thrown back and forth, and also there's Ukraine, Russia. If you don't post the flag in your story, you're not with us. If you don't do, you know what I'm saying? There's preconceived opinions that if you don't have them, and if you're not outwardly expressing them, then you're out.
Well, I think that social media accelerates it. But the Salem witch hunts didn't happen because of Facebook.
True.
The Nazi rise to power didn't happen because of social media. So you can't attribute it to that. And I think that it's been getting worse and worse throughout my lifetime. Like, it didn't start with COVID. It's just been, there've been like these watershed moments where it's reached a new level of intensity. One was certainly the Trump election.
Yes.
But
so if it's not social media, what is causing this recent wave?
It is, so it's like a general rise of social tension that comes from the breakdown of the system. So when things are going really well, and you're secure economically, and you're healthy, and life is working, then it's just like in a marriage, like the problems become visible, the latent problems become visible when the couple runs into money problems. This happens all the time.
Right.
So we were a very rich and well-functioning society, at least in the post-World War II era. And things started to deteriorate. I can't necessarily put a date on it, and this is like an egregiously simplifying narrative, but in the 70s, in the 80s, things gradually started to deteriorate, partly because of the neoliberal despoliation of the economy. There's so many factors coming together, but also, like, on even a bigger picture, the failure of the technological dream to create a perfect society. That actually sows the seeds of its dissolution. Like the failure of modern medicine to bring us perfect health, the failure of agricultural chemicals to bring us, a perfect food system, the general failure of technology to make us happy. Like the dream of our mythology, the destiny of the human being in our mythology has turned out to be bankrupt. And so this plays out in the breakdown of all kinds of systems, including the economic system, including the healthcare system, the educational system. None of it is working. And that exposes, like, that's like the water level dropping and exposing all of the boulders and
we're dragging the lake, and we're finding all these dead bodies and carcasses, and going like, oh, this was here the whole time. And I'm a child. I was born in 1980. I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, and I feel like that time was very neon and had the charade of like it's all good. And then you said you can't put a date on it, but if I was to put a date on it, when 9/11 happened, there's a certain level of reality and fear that came into the collective and has never left.
That was a major watershed. Yeah. Where we all decided that we all decided to put security on the altar.
Exactly.
And that was the most important thing. And then it was a major watershed. And then we just like started to orient everything toward what will keep us safe.
And why is that?
And we've become less and less safe
exactly
because of that.
But why is that harmful for someone hearing you maybe for the first time or hearing this perspective? Why is putting safety on the altar potentially harmful?
Well, for one thing, we're not here to stay safe. We're not here to survive life. It's based on a deep lie about the nature of the self and the purpose of life. So the mania for safety, like for a public policy establishment that is obsessed with risk minimization, how many lives will be saved, never asking about how well will lives be lived, but only basing policy on, epidemiological data. Like that obsession with safety is in part a reflection of the loss of purpose and meaning that I spoke of. Because if you don't know why you're here, if you don't have anything to dedicate yourself to in the world that you care about more than yourself, then of course you're just going to care about yourself. Like that's all that's left when life is stripped of meaning and you just kind of muddle through because you're not oriented toward a goal. So that's happened on a cultural level and on an individual level to many people. Like, why am I here? Why are we here? If it wasn't, after all, to conquer and transcend nature and establish bubble cities and space colonies, then why? Because that answer to human purpose, to the question of human purpose, is no longer satisfying. And we don't really have a new answer yet. So that's one dimension of it. The obsession with safety is a symptom. Yeah.
Can I take a tangent here? My question in this moment is, why is it not enough just to be here and to experience this life in all its beauty? Why is that not enough for us as humans?
Because we have creative powers that need to be used for you to feel fully human.
Because at the end of the day, we are creators.
Yeah.
Yes. And why? Well, I guess this would go into the economics. Let's stay in the safety piece, but if that's not enough, why do we have to create so much chaos? Why are we not creators of more beauty? Out of this beautiful gift of life that we've been granted. Because why do humans tend towards the chaotic?
Well, speaking to the current moment, we're not fully possessed of the knowledge of the purpose of our gifts. What I just said, like we are here as creators to bring more life and beauty into the world. Like we have not embraced that.
Yeah.
So our tremendous gifts are turned toward other purposes that generate conflict. It's not like necessarily that we're on purpose creating division and conflict, but when you don't have coherency in the direction you're going, and everybody is serving these shadow agendas that come down to the separate self, then of course there's going to be conflict.
Yeah, because now once we're only of self-interest, once we're in this space of like taking me, us, my, like if we win, someone else has to lose.
Right.
But I believe that the nature of reality is not that. And it's not that it's like life is infinitely abundant and there's enough for everyone. But perhaps
there is such a thing as scarcity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's scarcity too. And we create way more scarcity than there need be.
There it is. Because, I talked to Zach Bush, his perspective is like, we need to come out of the scarcity mindset.
Right.
What you just said is slightly different. Could you expand on that?
Yeah. It's not to deny the scarcity that is inherent in the 3D realm, in the world that we are in. Like, we only have one life at this time to live. Like, there's like a fundamental kind of scarcity. Like, if I choose to be with Stella and to have a baby with her and to raise a family with her, then I'm not going to get my 40s back. I'm not going to get my 50s back when we're done with this project. Like, those years are gone. Like, I can't do that with 100 women, or 1,000 women, and have a relationship with each of those children and be their dad and be there every day for them. I can't do that. Okay, this is like a primordial scarcity in the realm that we have chosen to incarnate.
Yeah.
It is about choice. Okay, that said, we have loaded an enormous amount of unnecessary scarcity onto that, where we have glued the lens of scarcity onto our eyes and see everything in those terms, and thereby create even more. Like, we create the confirmation of the ideology that we see the world through. So we have artificial scarcity of time. Like, why are we always so busy after thousands of years of inventing labor-saving devices?
Longer and longer work hours and work weeks. It's crazy.
Yeah. Why are we busier than hunter-gatherers? Literally. They anthropologists documented this, followed them around with notebooks and stopwatches. And they're like, where's the struggle to survive? These people are spending inordinate hours dancing, sitting around talking, making love, like playing games, like inordinate amount of time. Like, they work 20 hours, they work 20-hour work weeks,
Yeah, because nature,
even
nature doesn't have inflation. Nature, like, your hunger doesn't have inflation. It's like you can eat about the same every day of your life, truly. Yet we impose this like, the economic system, the financial system on top of us that lets us know, nope, you're not doing enough. You got to do more. You got to do more to catch up.
Right. So scarcity is built into the economic system because of the way that money is created as interest-bearing debt. We have also scarcity of darkness, scarcity of quiet. Like, I can hear engines almost any moment. Like, even at night in a pretty rural area, if I listen carefully, I can hear the distant hum. Most people on Earth, that's true of most people on Earth right now. Scarcity of darkness, scarcity of love, scarcity of intimacy, scarcity of touch. Like, we could be like, hugging, like in less developed places, people touch way more. Even if you go to like a backward village in Sicily or something, the guys will have their arms around each other's shoulders all the freaking time. Like, we have so many kinds of scarcity. Scarcity of food is artificial. Like, we waste so much of it, and we devote so much of our best topsoil to lawns.
Golf courses.
Yeah. So we have, and the perception of scarcity generates the reality of scarcity, because if you perceive a scarce world, you're going to hoard things for yourself. You're not going to share. And then you create scarcity for everybody else. Like, if every single person on the block has to have their own lawnmower and own leaf blower and own, washing machine and table saw, and that's like, you're always gonna be in scarcity. Like, everyone has to have one. You're not sharing them, so everyone has to have one. And then you project that scarcity onto the earth by extracting resources that are actually incredibly plentiful. So this is and then I guess I would even add the scarcity of the feeling of belonging and being at home here that comes from fully seeing each other and not discounting the humanness of our brothers and sisters and seeing them as less than a full human being. And that generates, again, the division, the competition. It's all self-created. So Zach Bush is right. Like, if we shift into an abundance mentality where we're no longer oriented toward maximizing the survival and well-being of a separate self, which only makes sense if we deny the fact that we're going to die anyway at some point. Like, the whole thing is based on a pretense. Right. So, but yeah, if we transcend that idea and look at the world through eyes of abundance, then we will experience incredible abundance. Doesn't mean that you will be able to do everything that you want and, you know, make babies with every woman on earth, for example.
Right.
But you'll be able to do anything you want. Not everything you want, but anything you want. That's the gift of this realm. You can learn anything you want, but you can't learn everything you want. You can, yeah.
Yeah, I have a teaching that I like specifically on what you're saying about having children with every woman on earth, which is the greatest way to love all women is to love one woman completely. And that doesn't mean for all eternity, for your entire life, but in that moment when you are with that woman, to love her completely. This is the best way to love all women.
Yeah.
If you can understand, and in that, we actually can experience infinity. We can experience unconditional love. We can experience the freedom that love, you know, gives our hearts if we come into this way of thinking, and that's bringing us back into our humanity and into relating. Yeah, I like where you're going with this. And there's another piece specifically about debt, because this is the piece in sacred economics that I'm like, is it possible? And I know it's possible, but how do we get into a debtless society? You know, a child is born into a family that's in debt. A young man or woman goes off to college and is immediately in $100,000 in debt. We send them out into the world like this is the way it is. When
the problem is not debt.
Oh, what is the problem?
Interest.
Oh, say more about that.
Yeah, I mean, debt is connected to gratitude. You know, we are born into a kind of a debt that takes the form of gratitude and not necessarily coercion. But like our parents, especially our mothers, give us the gift of life, not just by conceiving us, but by gestating us, by nursing us, by protecting us, by feeding us for years and years and years. And we didn't do anything to deserve that. And the same is true for Mother Nature, you know, and Mother Sun, and Mother Wind and Mother Water. Like, we didn't earn those gifts either.
Right.
So on some deep level, every person understands that life is a gift. And that understanding bears a desire to give forward. This is another reason, this is related to what I was saying before, like, why are we here? We're not satisfied walking around with an unpaid debt. And the only way to pay that debt is to give the life that we have received forward into the world, which means maybe to, and, you know, for some people, it might be to have babies. And that is one way to bring life into the world, or to provide for a family. But there are many other ways too to serve life. And that's why we're here. So it's related to debt. Debt becomes oppressive when the debt can never be paid, no matter what. And when you just get more and more deeply into debt, when the debt is permanent and ever increasing even. And that is essentially the state of the world right now. The debt can never be paid, and those who own the debt, the creditors, as a whole, get richer and richer and richer because the debt grows ever with interest. And the only way that that can be maintained is through a growth economy, where more and more of the world enters the realm of goods and services, and therefore can be the subject of lending. Because anyway, there's a whole economics piece here, but
yes, I like that piece. Like, they become richer and richer while being less and less of service, and that's the big flip. It's like they're actually doing less work by generating this interest, and not, returning it back to the toroidal system of energy that is required to create like a field of harmony.
Right. Yeah. Interest on money fosters accumulation. Like, if you have, here's one of the metaphors I use, I think, in sacred economics. Like, say that you are the proud owner of 1,000 loaves of bread. Mm-hmm. You cannot stay rich in bread by keeping it all, because in a few days it goes stale. So the only way that you can stay rich with bread is to give a loaf or two to anybody who's hungry. Give it all away, or almost all away. And then you have 1,000 people out there who owe you a loaf of bread. And when they have more than they need, they'll come and give it to you. So this is a wealth of relationships. It's a wealth of gratitude. And if you have a society where everybody is sharing, and anytime you have more than you need right away, you give it away to somebody else, then everybody is in debt to everybody else, and everybody takes care of each other. And everybody knows that your good fortune is their good fortune. So there's no competition anymore. There's no envy. Because, like, if you're a great hunter and you bring back a woolly mammoth, that's fantastic. Because what do you do with it? You throw a feast.
Share it with the whole village.
Yeah, and beyond, like, you have a feast. So this is part of, like, abundance mentality is not just a psychological shift. It's also a systemic shift.
Yeah.
Now, money is not like bread, because it doesn't go bad. It won't go stale. You can keep it forever. And normally speaking, you can put it in risk-free, interest-bearing investments so that it even grows with time. Now, there's, again, like, I don't know, if there's any actual economists listening, you might be like, oh, but what about capital investment, and yeah, like, if you have a growth economy, then you need interest in order to motivate lending that increases the domain of goods and services. Like, I can go into the economics here, but I don't think I need to right now. I just want to say, money is not like bread. And if we're going to have a abundance economy, and an economy that doesn't just grow forever, and make more and more of nature into commodity, and more of relationships into paid services, then we have to have a money system that is not based on interest.
So let's come into the human aspect of all of this, which is largely derived from our self-worth. I feel like we attribute our self-worth to how much money we have, because that's what we give our value to immediately, right? And so how does self-worth, and kind of having this, abundance mindset, or just like, I'm worthy to be here, playing it at the baseline human level? How do we begin to find our self-worth through purpose, through why am I here? How am I here to serve? How am I here to serve life? Which then in turn informs me of my actual worth.
Right. So financial wealth is a substitute for authentic self-worth. What we're really searching for in self-worth is to go to bed that night knowing that I did well today.
Yeah.
And if I was of good service to life, then I can sleep well at night. And if I was not, then I'm going to feel a disquiet. And I might be able to compensate for that feeling of disquiet by counting my, crypto earnings for that day.
Yeah.
But because that does not meet the real need, I'll need more and more crypto earnings in order to compensate for it. It's an addiction.
Yeah.
Then there's another poison that gets in, which is the way the society values us may not recognize the service that we do to life and beauty and the feminine on earth and the babies.
Yeah.
That might be invisible to the system. We're not probably going to get high status in society or a lot of money from our attentive parenting of our children. So we have this conflict between our authentic self-worth, which really comes from fully enacting who we actually are. Yes. As I said before.
Yes.
It's not like something that you have to be that's different from what you really are. But there's a conflict between that and the value system of society. Even if we give lip service to attentive parenting as a virtue, that's not what Elon Musk is celebrated for.
Right.
That's not what we know. That's not why we celebrate our celebrities. That's not where power comes from. When push comes to shove, what is valued is not that.
Although you can make a really good case right now that it should be, if we were truly giving our attention to the children, being in service to life, like raising up our mothers, having, I love this saying I say all the time, peace on earth begins at birth. If we could start from this mindset and raise up good children, how many of these issues that we're talking about today could be resolved through consciousness, through worthiness, through our children growing up with a sense of self-worth in this world, which is abundant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I'm going to come back to the coronation. There's a chapter towards the end called A Path Will Rise to Meet Us. And so you said earlier that we've kind of lost a sense for our collective purpose. We don't know actually why it is that we're here. And is there something in there that's resonating for you? Like, hey, what if we did give more of our attention and praise to our children coming into this world? What is this path that is rising to meet us?
So as our systems of sense and meaning break down and their formula for how to live life becomes obsolete, we no longer have a map,
right,
for how to be a man, let's say, how to be a woman, how to be a human being. So how do we orient then when we step into the unknown, knowing that it's the right step, but not knowing what the step after that will be? That's the path that rises to meet us. And that step becomes visible after you take the first step. And each step becomes visible as you move down the path. And because we have growing now, in at least, a segment of our culture, we have an understanding that's emerging of why we are here. It is a hard path, because of, the incentive system and the social values surrounding us. It's a hard path to walk. And in order to walk that path courageously, we need courage. And where does the courage come from? It comes from, one, the connection to spirit that is always available to affirm our authentic worth. And it also comes from having a community of people who hold the same values. And so even when the rest of society doesn't venerate you or even see you for the real work that you're doing, you do have a community around you that does.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so these are what can sustain us in walking the path that is invisible until we take each step on it. And that, and also the community that holds a vision of the destination, that this path we're walking intuitively, guided by the heart, leads somewhere. And sometimes it fades from view as you descend into a hollow and go through the trees, and you can't see that destination on the horizon. But then, like, you ascend a hill and there it is again. And maybe when you're in the swamp, you don't see it, but other people remember when you've forgotten, and they're like, yeah, you're not crazy for walking this path. That's where courage comes from. It comes from a band of brothers, as one organization in the UK is called. It comes from community.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like this saying. It's simple, but it's to be famous amongst your friends. There's something that's so powerful and genuine about that, where it's like, you're not seeking the validation of 8 billion people. That's insanity. But to have integrity, to do what you say you're going to do, to be seen by that community and be raised up by that community, to be hugged. Yeah, Sacred Sons events, I've had brothers come up to me like, bro, I've never hugged this many people before in one weekend. You know what I'm saying? And it's, these gathering spaces, they are training. We have to get back into it's a practice, right? We're getting into a new practice of a new way of being, a new way of relating together. And so when we come into that contact, what's revealed is the essence of our human nature. And it's exactly what you're speaking to. It comes right out of us. Yeah.
In this day and age, a lot of what really needs to be done in service to life not only goes without social support, but it actually could be condemned by society.
Yeah, big time.
Like speaking out in various ways, might bring penalties. So at this time, it's so important to have people who can see us, who can see like the invisible, like the things that are invisible to society or that are even condemned by society in a different light. Because the way that we, as human beings, the way that we orient, and there's nothing wrong with this, is to look to our fellows to see, to like reality check, are you seeing that too? Like, that's like, and am I lying to myself when I thought that I was doing, a service, but maybe that was actually just my ego, maybe I was just my self-importance. Like we have to be able to have people who, we have to be willing to be seen.
Yes.
And we have to have people who are able to see the kinds of things that are becoming important to us.
Yeah. And more than the validation, sometimes it's simply the accountability. Because to tell someone or to tell a brother, no, that is not in alignment with what you told me. Because you told me your values were your family and this, and this is not in alignment with that. And so like accountability is largely what we're lacking in society. And even related to the coronavirus, I mean, I think it's atrocious that these pharmaceutical companies, Pfizer being one of them, are not held accountable when there are, whatever it is, side effects, death, that are a result of the industrial medicine that's being provided to us. How can we lack, I guess a better way to say this, how can we expect individuals to be accountable when at large our institutions are not?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, and I feel like that comes from the village, that village mindset. It allows us and I get the reflections too, like, hey Adam, like the anger is not useful right now. If I'm, if there's something that's bringing that up, it's okay to course correct. It's okay to be met and to be validated, and also to get some perspective.
Right. And that's my point, is like, we can't see everything through one set of eyes.
Truly. Yeah. And so I'll bring it back to my vacation. I was just on with my family. One of the things that was so alive there was the collective memory, because my dad was telling me stories about when I was a kid, and these are memories I could not have conjured up on my own if I sat and tried. And he was telling me like, oh, you remember you were on the all-star team? I remember I used to take you to your games. And I had totally lost these memories. But when we're together, we weave this web of the collective memory. And then we get this tapestry of like, oh, that's who I am. I remember that through your eyes. I remember that through your voice, through your words, and through your excitement. Right. And so then we begin to come into contact again with that tapestry of who am I? And then the follow-up, why am I here? How can my gifts be useful? And it was beautiful to experience that again. I feel for all of those families who were separated, truly, we live in a culture in America where, we're encouraged to go off to college when we're 18 and move very far away. And we lose a sense of that self, of that tribe, even within our families. And I understand
even before COVID was happening.
Yeah. It's a part of the culture is to go away. And, not everyone's family is one that they desire to be around. I fully respect that. But when the culture at large is promoting separation, that's when we have to stop and say, like, is that in alignment with my true nature? And for me, that answer is no. I want to be connected. I want to be close. I want to be in the collective memory and in the collective imagining of what this can be, not isolated thinking I'm right or that I have it all figured out.
Yeah. And this is part of the stirring of a new story, and a new recipe for how to live. It used to be that you grow up, you turn 18, you leave your nuclear family and you establish your own nuclear family somewhere else, right, in Los Angeles or in Spokane or somewhere far away. And then your kids do the same. And you end up, in a nursing home with a bunch of strangers. Like, that has been the pattern of American life for 3 generations, right? 3 or 4 generations now. And now we're really like no longer pushing that program. I mean, its legacy is still very powerful, but that in like my family, that's no longer what success is, that you start your own successful nuclear family in a box somewhere. Yeah. Because we're starting to value the things you're describing, and the richer sense of self that comes when you are embedded in a weave of stories about who you are. And imagine how much richer it would be if it weren't only your parents who held those stories, but it was also your extended family and your clan and your entire village who also had stories from a different perspective, about your father, you know,
Yes.
and about you, and you knew their stories also. Like that is what it takes actually for a human being to know that they are here, to fully be at home in the world. We have a lot of like this invisible path to the golden land is a very long path. We have a lot of healing to do. And you know, these stories that I'm receiving in my Substack feed, the comments, you know, like all these stories of ostracism, and one of them, she was just describing she was naming all of the groups that she's been expelled from for being unvaccinated. You know, like the library, the knitting circle, the ukulele circle, the repertory theater, like on and on. Like she listed like 20 or 30 of them. Yeah. And the way that people see her, well, you deserved that, you know. And then like the amount of rage, you know, and then like despair and the feelings of betrayal, and like every side feeling some version of these things. Like this split now that has even invaded the nuclear family. You know, even the nuclear family is an exception now.
Right.
Like we have really been battered, our brothers and sisters. Like we've been battered. The domestic violence, the child abuse, you know, the addiction, the alcoholism, the misery, the depression, the anxiety. Like this is not to be negative. This is simply to name what is on the table. And also to put on the table the miracles, the awakenings, the plant medicines, like the incredible healing that is possible within us and among us. Like we have to put that on the table too. Otherwise, we're in despair. You know,
and I
sanity
think
is to include it all.
I think this is an important time to say, no one is coming to save us. Okay. Right. And so within that despair, it behooves us each, as tribes, as individuals, whatever it is, to like take up a banner, like raise your flag, bring your energy back into this life, bring that beauty, bring your humanity, because I feel like, you know, we have all been sold this story, like, don't worry, government's got it, daddy's got it, you know, don't worry,
got it, science
technology's got
it.
us, and now it's going to be like, hey, don't worry, the aliens got us. It's like, no, it's always been an inside out game. And so like it's now is the time to use our gifts and to bring them to the forefront of our culture, not the separation, not the canceling, not the I am right and you're wrong, but this is what I have to offer. And in that, we're still going to die. You know, we're not getting out of this life without a fight. And, you know, no one is. AI is not the solution. Trust, I mean, my opinion. However, that kind of sentiment of weaving a tapestry, whew, that's something worth living for.
Yeah. And I would also call to that part of yourself that is well satisfied with the way that you lived your day when you go to bed, because it recognizes, even if society doesn't, that you did something good and important that day.
Yeah.
That from the same source, you know that the situation, as degenerated as it is, it's not hopeless. And that the healing of the world does not depend on other people doing their part.
Yeah.
It's mysterious. It's very hard to understand this principle from the perspective of a separate self. But if you understand that you are a microcosm of the macrocosm, and that by your choices, you establish a principle of human nature that says, here is what a human being does in the situation I was in, then you are actually shifting the entire reality into alignment with that. And as if by magic, other people start making equivalent choices. But more important maybe is just psychologically, if you are serving life and beauty and the children and the feminine, then you know that it is possible for the world to heal. If you are not doing that, then what reason would you have to think that anybody else would do it sufficiently? Waiting for someone else to do it instead of myself. That's what came up actually during COVID, where I was like, gosh, maybe I better not speak out. I'm going to get reamed. And I'm like, hold on. If I don't do it, and just sit waiting for somebody else to do what I have established as a principle of human nature doesn't happen. No. No. And it doesn't really matter. I can build this intellectual apparatus of what I just said, but ultimately what I do, what I choose is not contingent on it necessarily meaning that the world can heal. It's like there's also the level of what is mine to do? Who am I? And to accept this creation as an opportunity for me to establish that to myself. Who am I? And that's also the necessity of the choice and of the scarcity that is a feature of this world. I get to choose among the many possible Charleses which one shall be. Yes. And that is the ultimate sovereignty, the irrevocable sovereignty. Who am I to be?
Yeah. Last piece here. I had a great conversation recently with a woman named Teal Swan.
Yeah.
And it was enlightening, and she connected some dots for me. I'm curious what you think. And those dots were this: we can solve the external energy crisis by solving the internal energy crisis. And what I mean by that is, if we can fill up our hearts and our minds and our life force energy as human beings who are creators on this planet, then all of the scarcity, the shortages, the lacks, the water, the energy crisis will be sustained because of our internal energetic alignment.
Yeah, I agree with Teal on that. Again, it's the inner and the outer mirroring each other. And you could also make it much more mundane, like the inordinate waste of energy that we commit in this world is not actually serving human well-being. The piles of plastic junk, the armaments, the far-flung houses, the nuclear family houses connected by automobile. If we were really in abundance, we wouldn't need all of that. And there are, on the horizon, incredible technologies of abundance. Like I'm talking about, free energy devices and that kind of thing. But those don't have room in our reality when we have established a strong psychic field of scarcity. Right. They are relegated to the margins of reality. And they won't come in until we are in a state of abundance. And that means, on the personal level, it's not even so much as where we source our energy, and is it sourced ethically and sustainably? It's where we are putting our energy. When you put your energy toward its best use, then it opens a channel for more energy to be received, because you're not in conflict with yourself. When you're in conflict with yourself, serving multiple masters in addition to the true master, then most of your energy is wasted in the conflict, and it blocks the flow. And the same is true collectively. We are incinerating most of our energy fighting each other. It's not going, like, that's the question that's not asked in the whole climate debate, and the, photovoltaics versus wind versus nuclear, and what should we do? Like, what is not asked is what are we doing with the energy? If we're using it beautifully, then Earth will provide.
Yeah.
The mother will provide. Like nature wants us to express our gifts and will give us everything we need to do that if we are doing it. And if we're not doing it, then our allowance is going to get cut off.
Right.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't think an eagle ever spreads its wings and go, oh, there's not enough air out here today, I don't think I should fly. You know what I'm saying? There's no lack in that experience. And so what I wanted to ask you here is, with all of this, with the coronation, and I read the coronation very early. I think it was even in April, May 2020. I originally read that, and it prepared me actually for what was to come. So I just wanted to say thank you for your courage in writing that, and for bringing these thoughts to the world, because we need this perspective as well. So thank you. Is it possible that the COVID moment happened for us and not to us?
I think that any illness on a individual or social level, any serious illness, provides an initiatory impulse. It provides an opportunity to make a choice. It does not guarantee that you will make the right choice. But what COVID has done, for one thing, it's showed us where we've been heading anyway, and asks us, is that the future that we want?
Yeah.
Like, none of this stuff, like the digital ID, the constant surveillance, the censorship, the
carbon monitoring.
Yeah, like the monitoring, the movement online, the increasing use of technology to mediate all relationships, the decline of public life, of embodied in-person life. None of this started just with COVID. It's been going on a long time. And now we're kind of shown a preview of where it's heading.
Yeah.
And we're asked, do we want that? And some people think that, yes. Anthony Fauci said, we should never shake hands again. Hugs and shaking hands should be part of the past. We should not do that again. It's stupid. It raises our risk. Okay, we're being shown a destination that is the ideal of a certain brand of futurist. It's a technological future. It's a future where even birth no longer happens from the womb, artificial wombs, virtual children, artificial food, synthetic food, the replacement of everything material with something virtual, VR, AR, XR. Like, this vision of the future is safer. You never have to take a risk because everything's happening in a virtual reality. Like, and some people think that is utopia. I think it's hell. But
I think it's
whether
insanity.
or not, yeah, but we are still shown that as a possibility. That's why I called the initial essay of the book "The Coronation." The book is named after that essay.
Yes.
But it's like a coronation is an initiation into sovereignty, and sovereignty is to consciously choose the world that we will live in and who we will be in that world. to consciously choose it, we have to know what we're choosing. Okay, we're being shown right now. Here it is. One of the essays is called "The Rehearsal is Over." The choice is here. Who are we going to be? And that, we can no longer escape that. We are being asked that every day. Which future do I align myself with? The time is now. Who am I? That's sovereignty.
Yes. Who am I? And I am because we are. I can only be me because of you in this moment. I can only be me because of my family and those reflections. I can only be here if I'm in relationship. And so to go in, I won't go into all the sovereignty stuff, but to lose sight of that, I can confidently say that is not why we're here. It's like, I'm here for more hugs, Charles. I'm here for more hugs and more love.
More hugs. Yeah.
All right. With that, is there any final words or message you would like to leave with the brothers and sisters who are listening? I hear those birds chirping, sounding beautiful where you're at.
You know, what you just said, more hugs, more love. And I would add more in-person life, excuse me, more of the things that we did without during COVID, more singing together, more playing together, all of that. The part of you that knows that that's true and that recognizes your alignment with that. Just touch into that as a treasure. That knowledge is a treasure. It might come under assault, but keep it sacred. Keep it sacred, keep it safe. Yes, as Gandalf said.
That's literally one of our agreements, is keep it sacred. When you're in our space, keep it sacred, whatever that means to you. I love that. I love that. All right. Charles, again, appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness. Yeah, we have a convergence coming to the East Coast in October. We'd love to, maybe do some Q&A, have a keynote talk, and get some hugs in. There'll be plenty of hugs. There's going to be 500 men gathering in North Carolina, Camp Daniel Boone, October 13th through 16th. So looking forward to that. Until then, Charles Eisenstein, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons. We're out, family. Peace.